Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Friday edition of Moohead Radio. I'm your host, a big and furry bovine, and joining me, we have a nice group of people. Brian and Steven, who's eating his popcorn, and Jake and Rick. You know the gang, and anybody else who's interested, I went ahead and I put up the link in the chat room. It's also right on the description of the show. If you want to jump in, hi, Padrug. We're going to be starting out talking about the Cleveland Browns, the team that can't get out of their own way. And I guess this is just the result of the Dorsey hangover, right? I mean, this is everything that could possibly go wrong is going wrong. And, if Dorsey had the magic touch, he lost it in Cleveland. Okay? That's what I mean. This is nothing new. This is nothing new at all. It's really remarkable. Yeah, the Kareem Hunt story. He's going through Rocky River. Now, I'd want to be high going through Rocky River too. But the bottom line is that he was caught speeding, and here comes Hammer time.
On the I-90 of all places.
Yeah, and asking to be caught, which is typical, and gets caught, and now he is doing something that is against the NFL rules, and he will be punished, and so on and on and on it goes. But I really, I have an easy solution.
Let's hear it.
Get rid of him. And just plain and simple, get rid of him. I don't want him. And I don't want any of these players because they don't learn. And we're being Josh Gordoned all over again. I don't care if he's a willing blocker. If the guy's going to miss 8 games every season and we're paying him for 16, it's not a good deal. I don't need analytics to know that.
Reach.
I mean, Jesus. I mean, it's one thing if a guy gets hurt, but if he is intentionally committing suicide, what are you going to do about it?
Mr. Red, why don't you just go in and say what Jordan said to the Hornets players? You're paid to play 82 games. You're paid to play 16.
Yeah, I mean, and look, Kareem Hunt, they all say the same thing. Oh, I'm so appreciative of this chance I'm getting, this second chance. No, they're not. They're sick motherfuckers. That's what they are. They have a disease. And I don't know how many times we have to go through this. I really don't. With the Josh Gordon thing, with the Callaway thing, and now with the Kareem Hunt thing. It's off-season time, and hey, when the cat's away, the mice will play. And here he is speeding down the highway, and he gets his ass busted. And you know who gets hurt? Not him, because Dorsey will pick him up wherever Dorsey goes or wherever. Somebody will pick him up because he's Kareem fucking Hunt. He beat a woman. He kicked a fucking woman, and it's amazing to me in the whole scheme of things that he's at a young age. He's had an opportunity to get it back together again, and what does he do? Oh, he's back hanging out with his old friends. He's back. It's just a matter of time until he hits another woman, and on it goes. Just like Josh Gordon. Oh, you know how I feel so appreciative of the organization. Yeah, because the organization is paying your sorry ass millions and millions of dollars so you can go out and get high. And and what it tells me is he may be the most willing blocker in the world, but he cares nothing about the organization because he's got a new coach. He's going to have a new GM. He's got new people in the front office, and this is the impression that he wants to make. It's just that simple. Fuck him. You're not going to win with people like this because they're going to fragment and fracture the locker room. And if you want to find out what kind of balls DePodesta and his analytics group have, let's see them really toe the hard line for once. And let's get people on this football team who not only want to play, but do play. And not because of injury, but that they refuse to self-injure themselves with their own craziness. It's enough is enough. Does anybody see this any differently? And I'm going to start backwards, which is typical of me. And Hammer Time, how you doing? You there, Hammer?
Let me take you off mute here. So I'm sitting outside of a basketball arena.
Yeah, you're on the air, buddy. What do you
Thank
think
you.
about the Kareem Hunt thing? What would you do?
I don't know. You'd think that people would learn. It's pretty simple. I don't know. It bothers the hell out of me. I mean, one part of me says, yeah, just cut him. Be done with it. So the other part of me says, it's not really an illegal thing to have pretty soon in Ohio and whatever. But you got to the reason why these people keep getting hired is because they have talent and they'll just continuously hire these people over and over. I mean, look at Josh Gordon, look at AB, they'll continue to hire these people until they can't use them up anymore. And having a little bit of cutting somebody like that and having a little bit of personal respect for your own program is probably the way to go, because we certainly don't have any respect outside of anything at this point.
Well, nobody in the locker room does. And I want to make it clear, this is not a marijuana issue, all right? So please don't take this as my stance on legalization of marijuana. I mean, I openly acknowledge I do not smoke marijuana, but my reasons are not ethical or judgmental. I think my mind is my most valuable asset, and I just don't want to alter it in any way. And I don't drink either, So, I mean, that's just me. But
I'd say you get enough mind altering just watching the Browns.
yeah, this isn't about marijuana. What this is about is a team trying to reconstruct a better attitude in a locker room. And this guy, who is the guy who called out players for not playing and running out their patterns and not giving it their all, look what he does at the first opportunity. When he knows he is not in the position to do that. It's all about professionalism. And it's like me pointing out in the last show, the difference between OBJ and Jarvis Landry. There's a big fucking difference between these people. And, when people don't try and don't run out their patterns, then to hell with them. When a guy cracks his back and has fractured his back, for God's sakes, and gives you the whole season, still gets 1,100 yards in receptions, and doesn't pull himself out of games, and he gives his all, that's a different story. That's a guy you want on the team. This is not a marijuana issue. This is a character issue, especially in regards to how much respect he has for the Cleveland Browns organization. And again, you're never going to be taken seriously by anybody who plays for you if you allow this shit to continue happening. And I know I'm going to hear this, Kawaki. No, I don't think he has control of himself. I think he's a helpless addict, just like Josh Gordon. I think that he's self-medicating because the sport that he plays in is a cruel sport, but he's finding a way to medicate himself that is absolutely against the charter rules of the NFL that will hurt the organization. He will not find an alternate way of dealing with the difficulties that he's having, whether they're difficulties coping because he can't hit women and he wants to calm himself down so he's not enraged all the time. I don't know what the issue is, but the fact is, when your employer states to you that you can't do this, it's against the rules, and it will result in you not being able to play, and you do it anyway, what you're saying is, my problem is greater than your problem. And I would tend to agree and say, well, then you get your problem fixed. You're no longer working for me. It's just that simple. I don't see that, and I don't give a shit if Kareem looks at, the Super Bowl and says, I could be back in Kansas City. That's what Josh Gordon thought. He was going to land with the Patriots. He's a sick person. It doesn't matter what team he lands on. He's got problems. And until the problems are addressed, he's not going to help anyone, including
that's why
himself.
I said that Seattle was the worst place for Jeff Gordon or Josh Gordon because, it's marijuana heaven.
And Jeff, again, if you are being tested for the presence of cannabis in your blood and you don't have a medical script for it, I would agree with you. Why you would have it stashed in your vehicle when you're speeding on Interstate 90 tells me that deep down you have no respect for any authority whatsoever, and you're just daring somebody to catch you. And they did, and this is what happened. And if he had that kind of self-control, he wouldn't be smoking it in the first place, now would he?
Well, in the worst case scenario is that it was someone one of his boys from high school that he let into his car that he was hanging out with earlier, and it fell out of their fucking pocket.
Oh, is that his excuse?
That's no, I'm just throwing that out there as a possibility.
That's like Gerard Warren and the gun from decades ago. It's like, oh no, that gun got I let some friends use my car, and the next thing I know, a gun appears. And it's like, yeah. If the gun don't fit, you must have quit. I mean, it's just pathetic. But I'd let him go.
Well, and you have the other asshole from the Giants that shot himself in the ass at the club.
Plexico Burles.
Plexico.
Plexiglass.
Yeah, I mean it's a remarkable thing, but if you want to be taken seriously now, Kevin Stefanski in front office, you've got to find people who can play. And if Stefanski is good at being able to advance the running game, I'm not saying that you're going to have a second back who is as talented as Kareem Hunt, but if he plays a full season, then he's more valuable to the team. And you have to start looking at utility in all of this. I mean, it's just no different than in baseball. It's like guy who can't hit left-handed pitching, left-handed hitter. But there are some guys. Well, yeah. No, but there are some guys who are for the right side of the plate who are 300 plus batting average guys against lefties, and those are the guys who should be platooned. And they have a place in a lineup because nobody remains healthy forever, and they have a place on the roster because they do something well. You can't do anything well when you're not playing, and the league has just told you can't play because you've broken the rules. Yeah. It's pointless to sit there and say, well, his talent makes up for what? The big 0? 8 weeks without him?
Yeah.
I mean, can't have it. You got to have your best players on the field as many weeks as you can. Yeah, it's right, Grunge. It's always somebody else got into my shit. That's always the story. And rather than saying I have a problem and I want to correct the problem, it's unfortunate. But the Browns have a great running back in Nick Chubb. And I think that, I would part ways with Dontrelle Hilliard. He's slow and can't return kicks. I think Dearness Johnson was a better kick returner than Dontrelle Hilliard. And you might want to look at him as a guy fighting for a roster spot next season. But
it doesn't cost you a hell of a lot of money either.
And one thing that Shanahan has proven in San Francisco is that you can convert second, third, and fourth round running backs into top grade running backs if the scheme is correct. As long as you have a guy who has vision, who can find a hole, if your front line is good enough to provide those holes, somebody will run through them. Now, I'm not saying that they're not going to be like Nick Chubb, who get into the secondary and turn 8-yard gains into 56-yard touchdowns. Now, those are few and far between. But if the holes are there and you can give me 5 yards a carry because the holes are there, that's beautiful. Mostert would not run for 220 yards in a single game for the Cleveland Browns.
True.
Okay? So in the right scheme, you can get somebody to do the job for you. You don't need to put up with Kareem Hunt if you have an offensive line and if you have a coaching staff that's dedicated to cultivating the running game. It's just not that, it's Daktar, thanks for your point of view. You always have an interesting way of looking at things.
I just think they treat marijuana worse than they do some of the other violent offenses that occurs in the NFL, like domestic violence, sexual assault, murder, stuff like that. I still think they treat marijuana in certain cases worse. Like A lot of their penalties are even more severe. Like, I think if you're a repeat offender for marijuana, isn't it you get like a year ban? But in sexual assault cases, you get like 6 games, 4 games suspensions. Like, I don't get that.
Well, it's a federal law. They have to do that. They wouldn't.
I understand, but they treat marijuana worse than they treat domestic violence in the NFL.
I think that's a federal law thing, though. I think they have to drug test heavily and that's a drug suspension. That's a banned substance. So they have to do it. They don't want to, but they have to.
I understand.
And again, one of the things, and I'm not disagreeing with either man here on the panel, because again, I don't like to make this a marijuana issue.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, this is if your livelihood of millions of dollars a year was dependent on your ability to work, you would not do something that would take that ability away from you. And if you can't control that, then you have a problem.
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Muhead on that. And marijuana is not addictive either. I've smoked it before. It's the non-addictive drug.
It's quite voluntary.
Yeah, it's voluntary. Yeah.
And I will say this because I feel badly about, it was funny. I was reading a tweet from Jamil Hill, formerly of ESPN, and she and I do see eye to eye on a number of things, and she was outraged when the NFL, in essence, put out a public service announcement about a young black male who was shot and killed by police officers, and that it was this sappy public service announcement. And her comment was, seems to me, I remember a guy named Colin Kaepernick, and who was kicked out of the league basically for going down on a knee and taking a political cause, and was never allowed to return to play again. And she said, was I just dreaming? And the answer to all of this is one common denominator. And what are there, 32 teams in the NFL? Is that right? I mean, there are 32 wealthy, smug, white men who own NFL franchises. 32, that's all. And they don't give a fuck about anything except making money. They will not provide for people's medical conditions after they're done with them and their careers are over. They'll pay the superstars for as long as they need to, but when they reach a certain age, they'll cast them asunder and find new ones. They'll find ways of selling their merchandise. But the bottom line is they don't care about concussions, about CTE, about the 57-year life expectancy of football players. They don't care about the people who were the initial building blocks, the Nick Bonacontis, and the guys who suffered brain damage to make the NFL what it is today. They don't care about any of them. So why in the fuck would they care about Colin Kaepernick? They don't care about anybody but themselves. And they all wear American flags on their custom suit lapels. And the reason they do that is to look good in the public eye. This is not a marijuana issue. This is, if a player wants to play, there are rules they have to follow. Do I agree? I hate the fact that the NFL is such a violent sport that a lot of the players, not just Kareem Hunt's a dummy because he's speeding in a car and getting caught with that shit. People are medicating themselves in so many different ways, drinking and doing all kinds of things because of the constant contact and pain that the football game causes them. There is no doubt in my mind that this attachment to marijuana, and the reason that the league will eventually back off its position, is because the owners will realize, well, shit, we'll be able to get more games a year. When we go up to 18 games a season, we'll legalize marijuana. No, I'm telling you what's going to happen. And I will sit here on the fucking air, and I'll tell you when it happens. And I'll remind you when I told you.
And by week 14, every game will be watered down, and you'll have half the roster injured. By the playoffs, it'll be completely depleted.
But they'll give the players the right to smoke marijuana, because if we can get 18 games and more revenue, hey, we'll go ahead and we'll drop that. You know, it's all legal in a bunch of states anyway, so it's all fine in the NFL.
Yeah, and they said that 2 extra games will the revenue would be $2.5 billion for 2 extra games. The NFL would make extra.
Now, I will say that the one exception to this is Jerry Jones and Michael Irvin. Because even when Michael Irvin got kicked off the air at ESPN, Jerry Jones was one of the few people that actually reached out to him and helped him out.
Right.
Oh yeah, Mr.
And
Miller.
helped him out while he was a Dallas Cowboy on multiple occasions with drug issues.
You know, what I'm going to tell you is this.
Yeah, Jones paid for his rehab. That is true.
If you preside in a business that kills people prematurely,
Yep.
like the tobacco industry, you know what you're doing. When Joe Camel commercials were hooking kids on cigarettes and they ended up with fucking esophageal cancer, you know, if you're part of that, you're not a good person. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And you can give me an example of, oh, I can make headlines by helping this guy out or that guy out. But the fact of the matter is that you are in charge of a team, and your revenue that you are so hoarding is all predicated on a game that is shortening people's lives. And you watch, they will allow marijuana. They will allow all kinds of things that will allow players to play more games. And, you know, they don't care about the length of term of the players' contracts. They can always find new replacement guys who want to make a couple $1 million.
Yeah.
It is bleak, folks. Open your eyes. And Jameel Hill, I agree with you, but the bigger picture is the people you're complaining about don't care about anyone. And they're the people that got you fired from ESPN because they don't care about any news, whether it's CTE. They will deny it, just like the cigarette companies denied lung cancer. They will deny it until the end of time because their financial interests are the only thing that matter to
Bottom
them.
line.
That is the bottom line. And I wish it wasn't that way. So I take it, Rick, you're next. Kareem Hunt.
You just shake your head anymore. I'll be curious to see what kind of response they get now. I assume they are still trying to find themselves an offensive coordinator. You know, this could affect the running game a little bit. And I'm trying to figure out the marijuana was in 3 different locations. Was he thinking that, you know, he was going to outsmart the cops? He said, I figured they'll only find 2 of them. You know,
No, he was so high, he wanted to make sure he didn't forget where the stash was.
that's probably it.
Yeah,
I'm willing to bet, too, the time on the police report was 4:20. So there you go.
There you have that. All right. And before I go to Jake here, I just want to, you know, but Garrett should stay, Ron Shane's asking. I mean, Myles Garrett, I applaud him for hitting, you know, Rudolph in the head with the helmet. I would, in essence, strap Rudolph to a pole and allow multiple players to flog him with a helmet. Fuck him. He's a Steeler and he's a racist, and I don't give a shit. The guy's a liar, and he ain't never going to play anywhere anyway. Myles Garrett didn't do something that other players haven't done, and something that's against charter rules in the NFL. Myles Garrett needs to prove to me that he can play in a defensive scheme that makes not just himself look good, but makes the team defense better. And that's the basis by which should Myles Garrett stay or leave, is if he goes rogue and continues to do his thing instead of the right thing, then we don't need him either. All right? Yeah. But no, I'm not equating Kareem Hunt and Myles Garrett. That's just wrong. So what do you think, Jake? Kareem Hunt, what do you do with him?
You definitely get rid of him, and he will be suspended again anyways, because they're still holding the first video over his head. But it's pretty weird that how dumb he was here, because they know the players that, are tested from Pro Bowl to March. And they kind of have the idea after that, it's 1 test a year for marijuana. So why don't you just wait? Like, it's pretty obvious. And all the players smoke. Pat McAfee even said they would all smoke once April hit because they knew when they can get away with it.
Hi, Tiffany.
So, yeah, but they know when they can get away with it. After April to the end of the season, they do not get drug tested. So why not just wait till April?
Yeah, well, I mean, if you're down to a point where you're strategizing a problem like this, I mean, again, I want people who are going to play. And when I read the story of a guy like Kuechly who just decides, okay, I'm 28 and I'm done. I mean, if you're smart and you earn that much money, you invest the money correctly, and you also can go on and work at a second career. You're good. And I think that is, if you really want to be an empowered player in today's environment, you're not a slave to playing football. If you get out of the game at a relatively young age and don't continue to cripple your body after you've slowed down, and you have high standards, not only in the way you play, but high standards in terms of your own life and lifestyle.
Luke Kuechly.
Hey, Mr. Moohead, is Kareem Hunt, is he going to appear on an episode of Cops? That way I'll tune into it.
Say what?
Is he going to appear on an episode of Cops?
I don't get it.
You know, like the Bad Boys, they have the Cops.
Yeah.
Fox 26. They have it in Houston. I don't know if they have it in Cleveland, but I'm just wondering if when Kareem Hunt got caught, if it's going to be on the next episode of Cops.
Well, he's already been on TMZ, and so he's off to a really good start. It's but again, we'll go over to Steven. Steven, what do you say? Kareem Hunt, you keep him or?
Oh God. If he's looking at a year suspension or 10 games, there's really no point in keeping him. If it's just a minimum of 4 or 6 games, I'd say maybe. And I was thinking, well, maybe we can give this guy another chance this year. But now after this marijuana case, dude, I smoke, okay? But if I'm making millions of dollars, they say, hey, you got to give up the weed. I'm doing it. I'm not even going to question it. I'll just drink. I won't even think nothing about it. I'll find other ways. I'll go drink wine. Get drunk on Friday.
Yeah, we've seen what happens with you and wine. You should never
don't go there.
I drink, and then therefore, but if they say get off the marijuana, that's nothing. That's not
definitely no Jack Daniels.
Not even addicted to weed. You can't even get addicted to it. It's been medically proven you cannot get addicted to marijuana. You're more likely to get addicted to your prescription medication than you are to marijuana.
Hey, Rick, I wanted to ask you something. You're a great philosopher, aren't you? You know your fair share of philosophy. Who said I drink, therefore I am?
Let me go through that song. Was it Rennie Descartes? Drunken fart. Therefore I drink. I drink before I
am. Very rarely stable. Heidegger was a boozy beggar. He would drink you under the table. But who said I drink, therefore I am? This is Monty Python stuff, folks. And Rick and I are...
Rennie Descartes was a drunken fart. I drink, therefore I am.
Oh, is that what it is?
I think it is, but I'm not sure.
Immanuel Kant was a real pissant. He was very rarely stable. Heidegger was a boozy beggar. He would drink you under the table. Rene Descartes was a...
There was one before Rennie Descartes.
Okay, I'm drinking tonight.
All right. So yeah, he drinks, therefore he is. Okay, Brian, did you get rid of Hunt or not?
Well, I've been saying since for a couple of weeks now that yes, Sashi 2.0 is going to come in and destroy the roster. So Hunt was already going to be gone. Hunt and Beckham were already going to be gone. So it's just a matter of who the other 38 players are.
All right. And, and this is a good point by Kawaki. Why are we talking to fucking Ben McAdoo? And the reason is Bob McAdoo doesn't know how to play football. Look, here's the deal. If you don't see this, then you're blind. All right? The Giants are the only organization, maybe the Jaguars, who could be compared in futility to the Cleveland Browns at this point.
Yeah.
So the Giants stand up and say, we'll take Freddie Kitchens. And the Browns say, okay, well, we'll take Ben McAdoo. I mean, they're trading shit back and forth. I mean,
you're trading cat shit, then they're giving you dog shit in return.
Yeah. I mean, nobody else wants to. Ben McAdoo saying, "Well, fuck, I spent time with the Giants. I can make money in Cleveland." And Freddie Kitchens, I know my career's down the shitter, but I can be a tight ends coach there in New York. And what the hell, in New York, they won't understand a thing I'm saying. But once you're down to either the Giants or the Browns, then you're down to your last job in the NFL. But nobody's going to accept these positions with teams that are of low standing. Let's be honest about it. And I know that Ben McAdoo is a lousy head coach. Nobody knows what his role is going to be, but he is interviewing for an offensive position, and there's lots to say about him that was offensive. And nobody knows about this offensive coordinator situation. Whether McAdoo is just another guy who will help Stefanski along and be another voice to be heard from because he's a former head coach, I don't know. McAdoo interviewed with Hugh Jackson, by the way, for the job in 2018. I'm telling you, it's back and forth. But it ended up going to Todd the God Haley, who didn't know which of his plays he should even call. McAdoo was 13-15 as Giants head coach, but after a 2-10 start in 2017, it was over. Meanwhile, the Browns have hired former Vikings receivers coach Crazy Dog as tight ends. Drew Petzing as tight ends coach. He's 32 years old, and he's kind of a Norv Turner disciple. Remember Norv? How could we forget?
Good head coach. Very good head coach.
Yeah, I mean, Norv.
Where? Where was he a good head coach?
No, he was more of an offensive mind.
Yeah, offensive coordinator with his speed.
Yeah. He never could. In his defense, he never had a healthy Tomlinson in the playoffs. He was always stuck with an injured Tomlinson or Rivers when he made the playoffs with the Chargers. I would defend him there.
And one thing I can say about McAdoo was his quote saying, "If I could play under Tom Coughlin, I could play I could coach anywhere, And he was with Coughlin in 2014, and and he was named the coach in 2016. He had an 11-5 record, but then it all went to hell the next year as soon as people realized who they were playing for. And of course, he benched Eli Manning, who's now gone, when he found out that Freddie Kitchens was coming to town. I mean, let's be honest. If you're Eli, you're going to say, how can this get worse? And there's Freddie Kitchens.
Check, please.
Yeah.
I'm out of here. Seacrest out.
So far, we have former Raiders head
Hey,
coach.
at least he was smart enough to only lose until he was 500. And then he got up from the table. So
we got Bill Callahan as his offensive line coach and possible senior offensive advisor. Chad O'Shea is a wide receivers coach and passing game coordinator. Stump Mitchell stays, and he's interviewing Rick Scangarello, but no news yet about what's happening there. He's replaced Steve Wilkes, and he's waiting on Joe Woods. So all of these things are happening. What it all means, I don't know. Except they are experienced names to help a young head coach along, I guess. I don't know. And meanwhile, so I can tell you I was right about something again! George Paton takes himself out of the running for the Browns general manager position. Now Andrew Berry is the leading candidate. Did we ever really have any question? You knew it was going to be Andrew Berry.
Sashi Brown 2.0, come on down.
No, I mean,
You've got a team to burn to the ground.
I mean, you're wondering why Jimmy Haslam didn't feel the need.
Why, hell, I know that boy's got penguin flippers for arms, but Damn, he's almost as fast as that guy. We should grow him.
I reckon I said I
Fucking
said.
awesome.
No. The reason the Browns didn't interview a African American head coach is that they know, hey, they're going to fill the GM position with Andrew Berry. This was known from the get-go. This is no surprise. And why would Peyton take himself out of the running for the job? Because he knew the writing was on the wall. And it wasn't Aramaic either. It was in clear, bold-face English. You know, we're giving you the token second interview, and we're bringing in the guy that I've already worked with.
And then we're
before.
bringing in Token from South Park.
No, I mean, I don't look at it that way. I look at it as the big circle, you know? It was like Harry Chapin. All my life's a circle, sunrise and sundown. I mean, we keep going around and around like a fucking merry-go-round, and we're back to Andrew Berry again.
Yeah. So does that make
circle
jerk?
That's right. Second verse, same as the first. I'm Henry VIII.
I am Henry VIII. I am.
Oh, God. You want
How
to
about
drive
the
somebody
99
crazy.
bottles of beer on the wall? 99 bottles.
Exactly.
Take one down, pass it around. 98 bottles of beer on the wall.
Or I got another one for you. Mock in bird in. Yeah. Okay. Enough Dumb and Dumber references too on the program. I'm not going to go in that direction.
Mr. Haslam should star on Dumb and Dumber.
Huh?
Yeah, I think he'd be a great candidate for Dumb and Dumber.
The whole organization is Dumb and Dumber. I mean, it's and are you still fighting, Stephen? You and Brittany?
No, we're fine.
She's telling you not to sing, you know?
Oh.
No,
public service announcement. I don't.
You know, when James Taylor and Carly Simon sang Mockingbird, it was obnoxious. Take Lloyd Christmas. It goes completely, you know.
Not to be confused with Lloyd Carr. Completely
Right,
different person.
Well, and that's
And
like
Lloyd
listening to Tony Clifton sing I Will Survive. You haven't lived until you heard, if you know who Tony Clifton was the alter ego of Andy Kaufman, and he part of his nightclub shtick. And if you never heard him say, I'll do it for you. First I was afraid, I was petrified. It was like, it's, enough, please.
Mr. Haslam can star as Elmer Fudd, the movie.
Now, wait a minute. How am I supposed to interpret this? He is no Roxanne.
Of course.
No, I would hope not. But does that mean that you have something going with Roxanne? I mean, I don't know. You don't have to put on the red light.
I caught the rabbit door.
Are we getting into like innuendo here?
I don't know. There's something fishy going on in the room.
Yeah, I don't fishy. That's not a good thing to say either in this context.
Unless you're a Pisces.
Oh, God almighty.
Something smells like rotten tuna and it ain't me.
Dactar was not a big
Massengill on line 1.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for talking about singing. Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah. We'd have to hear. Yeah. Which, when you've perfected titanium like Roxanne, Stephen, we'll give it another thought. But until then,
Fire away. Yeah, oh, God. Yeah, you can imagine what life is like in my world. 39 minutes past the hour of 6. And with this comes this great news on Cleveland.com. Kevin Stefanski will probably use a number 3 receiver less than the Browns did in 2019. You're saying, why is that significant? For one, that means that, and we already know that Higgins is gone, but So will Ratley, and so will all of them, and Kaderil Hodge or Kaheril Dodge, or I mean, that's one of those names, Kaheril Dodge, or it's like, a sale of two titties.
I mean, do the Browns even have a 2 receiver at this point with Odell?
I was going to ask.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, it's
No, because Beckham and Landry are both going to be gone. So
God, this is like a rebuild or retool.
Get this. The
Cleveland
Cleveland Browns.
Can't get rid of them now. No one wants them.
The NFL average of like 30% of snaps would have 3 receivers. Stefanski, only 18% of the time last season did he have 3 eligible receivers, wide receivers, on a play.
that's only slightly better than 1 and 6 for you and me.
2 receiver formations more than 50% of the time, and often had multiple running backs. Good luck. You just lost one of them, buddy. Or tight ends on the field. Don't really have one, buddy.
Come on. Ricky Seals-Jones is not that fucking bad.
Better than Ricky Lee Jones. Okay? But
Ricky Seals and Crofts.
That's right. Yeah, he's only good in the summer breeze. It makes him feel fine. The Browns use 3 receivers 60% of the time. But the funny thing is, it still was just Landry and Beckham who were being thrown to. So, very, very odd. The Vikings, too, were really top heavy at wide receiver because Diggs led with 91 targets and Thielen was next, 47. And then I don't know who Olabisi Johnson is, but I'm sure Tony the Calf would. But then the fact is that most teams have go-to receivers, but in the case of the Vikings, Dalvin Cook was the Vikings' second leading receiver, and now that Kareem Hunt will be, I hope, gone. Nick Chubb did still get 45 targets, and it's good to have running backs who can catch the ball out of the backfield. And if anyone says Duke Johnson, I am going to pull my penis out and show it on the screen, okay? So please, don't go there. That's not what we're doing today. At least not what I'm doing.
Speaking of Duke Johnson, how many targets did he have, Steven?
Wait, what? What?
How many targets did Duke Johnson have this season? Catching the ball?
Oh, catching the ball? Not had more carries. Running the ball.
Well, that's surprising.
See ya, Brittany.
And I would like to add, too, with Stefanski, I'm kind of optimistic where they said he's a Kyle Shanahan disciple in terms of how he coaches offense. He managed to help Kirk Cousins have a decent season without really having a tight end threat. Kyle Rudolph did not have a touchdown until like week 15.
Right.
So he does not need a tight end to be great because, like, the argument was that he needs a guy like Kittle, which he does not need at all.
Well, I mean, the thing is that by simplifying the number of times that Kirk Cousins threw the ball, a lot of bad things are going to happen when Kirk Cousins is left to his own devices to throw the ball pretty much at will. So he controlled it by having, formations that had tight ends on the field, running backs on the field, and only 2 wide receivers. That also allowed better blocking schemes so that Kirk Cousins had more time to throw, so he didn't make mistakes when he was rushed. We have a problem with our offensive line, so I don't know. We have to have a better offensive line to employ that strategy. It isn't that, I would rather Baker Mayfield understood the offense and would be able to inside out know who he was going to go to, and there would be far fewer mistakes made. And the mistakes that we made killed us in this last year. And again, holding on to the ball, we are not in a position to even compete with the Kansas City Chiefs kinds of teams. The best we could hope for would be, again, to sneak into the playoffs like other defensive-minded teams did and maybe stifle somebody along the line. But as soon as we got to the creme de la creme stage, it would be over. The Cleveland Browns don't have the depth of roster to be able to stop really good teams who can get stops when they need it. So,
well, and especially if you think of changing the entire defensive scheme from a 4-3 to a 3-4.
well,
They don't have the linebackers and they don't have the nose tackles.
I mean, and if you didn't read this, and again, this is part of my response to Jameel Hill. The New Orleans Saints are going to court to keep the public from seeing hundreds of emails that allegedly show team executives doing public relations damage control for the area's Roman Catholic Archdiocese to help it contain the fallout from a burgeoning sexual abuse crisis. That's right. Attorneys for about 24 men suing the church say in court filings that the 276 documents they obtained through discovery show that the NFL team, whose owner is devoutly Catholic, helped the Archdiocese of New Orleans in its pattern and practice of concealing its crimes. This again is a sad, sad day. And again, you are what you eat, and you are what comes out of your mouth and what's in your heart. And I can't make the 32 owners. I mean, they were talking about what a good thing it was that Art Modell, wasn't let into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I mean, I agree, but I was happy when he died. He's a bad guy. What he stood for was bad. He was a racist, and so was Rooney. The fact of the matter is that these people, not good people, and they have a history of taking advantage of whatever they can take advantage of so that they can make more money, whether it's human life, whether it's where they bring their franchise, it's how they lie to the public, whatever it is. It's all a bunch of crap. And, why should the football team have to do with the Archdiocese? Why is the organization getting involved in it? Whether they believe that the church is innocent or not, why does your business get associated with something like that? And the reason is because the person who owns the team is a bad person. And Jimmy Haslam, is a bad person. You know he is because he robbed people of money. So you know that he's not a good person. And you know that Bob Kraft is not a good person. You know that. I mean, and if we sat there and went through the group of them, it's really, and I know what you said about Jerry Jones, but I mean, the things that have come out of his mouth over the course of a career, I mean, you just know that these people are bad news, and it's a shame, but it's okay to stand up for the Archdiocese who's committing acts of sexual abuse, but it's wrong to kneel on one knee against, for a cause during the national anthem. That's wrong, and you'll never play for us again. But it's okay if you abuse people sexually. That's fine.
And can I ask about how did the city react when Art Modell said that he did not have the funds or fan support to keep the team in Cleveland when they had the highest attendance in the league?
Look, the fact of the matter is, what people who are not from Northeast Ohio, I mean, he leveraged into the NFL in a way that was inconceivable. Art Modell was not a wealthy man when he took over the Browns and shit all over Paul Brown. He was an advertising guy, a lot like Ted Stepien, okay? He was an advertising guy in Cleveland, and he didn't have the money. He leveraged his way in because the league, that's what the league wanted, and they found another guy who would go with their program. He was a meddler from the beginning. He was bad news. What did the fans think? I mean, the Andre Rison thing busted him, and he didn't have that much money. He mismanaged his funds. And all the talk about, there were people buying Browns merchandise left and right. But, this guy couldn't make it work for him because God only knows what he was doing with his money and his little, dolly wife. Who knows what in the hell they were doing with the funds? But it was all bullshit, and and people said, well, in the end, he won, and he did. He died, like all people do.
Do you think he used the stadium leverage, demanding a new stadium essentially to get out of Cleveland? Was that his plan to get out altogether?
Yes, yeah, because obviously the issue was that he used that and that he claimed that city council didn't act quickly enough on it. But he was working in the 11th hour, in Baltimore. So the whole thing was really pretty lame. Let's get Tony the Calf on here. Hey, Tony, how you doing?
What's up, guys?
What's up with you?
Oh, just got on my lunch break. I figured I'd stop by, say hello.
Well, it's always nice to hear from you. What are you having for lunch, Tony?
I'm actually not eating lunch. I'm just taking a break. So I don't know what it is about the winter and people have nothing better to do than call the airlines and waste our fucking time. But today is just.
I wonder the same thing about my show. It's like, what is it? People waste their time calling my show, but
it's just one of those mental days where people ask the dumbest fucking questions, and you're like, "Fuck, does this day ever end?" So.
Grunge, Antonio Brown did get arrested last night. He's a bad person. I think that he's brain damaged. I think that he is showing we didn't get any of this in Pittsburgh, but brain damage, we've seen it with Junior Seau. We've seen it with Dave Duerson. We've seen it, and I think it alters the judgment of people. I don't want to say that necessarily Antonio Brown is a bad person because, I saw way too much of this. In Cleveland alone, who was the guy we saw? Jamal Lewis, the guy we got from the Ravens, and he had CTE, and he was bankrupt despite all the years he played NFL football. Who knows who had siphoned all of his money away? Leroy Horde, who had, under the radar, nobody gave a shit about him. He's got, the symptoms of CTE. We could make arguments about Bernie Kosar having all kinds of problems since he left football. And so I'm not so fast to judge Antonio Brown. I think there's a possibility that he is suffering from brain damage because his behavior is exceedingly erratic. And we never got that out of him in Pittsburgh all the years he was there. So
he's like a bipolar person that's gone totally manic.
Well, and I don't know if you saw the most horrifying footage on the internet, but Delonte West, and I bring Delonte up because he was being kicked and beaten in the street. I think he's homeless at this point. It's safe to say he was being literally stomped.
Oh, the Delonte West thing. Oh man, that was so sad.
I mean, to see what happens to people with mental illness or brain damage or whatever it is. And, Delonte West is somebody who I thought was a great, finely conditioned athlete. He was a good basketball player. When he played for the Celtics, a really good defender. He had length and he could score over people. And it was out of respect that this program, I was notified about his problems before it became generally known. Tony, you remember the story.
I remember it of him showing up in his pajamas to practice and fucking.
Right. I ate that story because
you sat on that fucker for a long time.
Yeah, I have respect for people and their privacy. The same thing was true of God, give me the name of the Cleveland Browns offensive lineman, Ryan. Tucker.
Ryan Tucker. Yep.
Another guy.
I almost said Shazier. What the fuck am I thinking?
A mental illness situation that I was leaked on, and it's like we're not going there. I mean, if people want to use my crummy little show to spill the beans about people, Delonte West was also, acting up, refusing to get on teams' charter flights after basketball games, and they had to bribe him with cigarettes. This is the length. This guy's bipolar, and
he also didn't get any help. That rumor about him fucking LeBron's mom was fucking the worst. That
The whole thing was
killed him.
bad, and that's why people who speculate in these things, I have no respect for. They're bad people. Delonte West isn't a bad person. He's a person who is sick, and unfortunately, people with bipolar syndrome have a tendency not to take their medication. It is an unfortunate reality, and now he's sunk to this level. And when they tried to talk to him, if you heard his totally incoherent rage and rant, it's sad to see. I'm not going to judge Antonio Brown because
NBA, the people are taking shots at the NBA for not helping him. He doesn't want help. I don't know what you do. If he doesn't want to get help, he will not stay anywhere to get help. He will find a way to get up back on the streets. When he's manic, he wants to be there, and that's the bad part about it.
Yeah, it's really an unfortunate thing. But, you know, I've said everything I want to say for this Friday, and I don't know what to tell you, except I want the Browns to get better, and the way you get better is everybody's got to be on the same page. And I mean the players and the coaches. I don't mean this whole analytics struggle and all.
We just got to get better every day.
Yeah, I don't mean that. I mean players have to work in conjunction with their coaches to learn the offensive system, and the coaches have to be teachers, and the players have to be willing pupils. And if they're not, if the players are not willing to do anything but collect a paycheck, they can't play for you. And, you know, Kareem Hunt has obviously valued his personal high as more important than the rebuilding of the franchise after a really devastatingly bad year, and a year in which he only played 50% of the games. So, because of his previous transgressions. So, you know, you don't sit around and wait for this. He's young, and you say, oh, but he could turn it around. But people don't do that. Darryl Strawberry didn't do it. Dwight Gooden. I could go through story after story after story of people who succumb to their demons, and teams stay with them and stay with them. And it's like, how many times? Roy Tarpley is another one who comes into my mind from the NBA, the old Dallas Mavericks. I mean, how many times do you go to bat for somebody before you realize they're not about getting better, you know?
Right.
I don't mean to sound heartless about it, but, you know something? I thought the same thing, Grunge. It did. There's something sickening about a guy who's obviously not in his right mind being stomped by somebody on the street, and you don't even know why, what the situation is. Yeah, it's really too bad. But at any rate, thanks a lot, everybody, and people on you know, the panel. Enjoy your weekends. And you know, I almost forgot I should end the show on a certain note. I have 3 minutes. Can I do my 3-minute spiel?
Go ahead.
It's your show. Do whatever the fuck you want.
Go
Zion Williamson made his professional debut with the Pelicans and started the game and was pulled off the floor in 4 minutes. I'm the former coach of the Warriors, Mark Jackson, the broadcast team. Started saying, look, I mean, if you have to pull this guy off the floor after 4 minutes, and then they ran a graphic on the screen saying that Zion Williamson weighs 285 pounds. That's the third highest weight of players in the NBA. And there was this huge Twitter backlash about fat shaming. Somebody is feeding back here about fat shaming. And I want to differentiate fat shaming from fact shaming, because we live in a time where facts are not being paid attention to, and that's too bad. At 6'6", if he is 285 pounds, which I guarantee you he's not, okay? He's heavier than that, because by all accounts, he's heavier than he was before he was injured, all right? So sitting out all of these games, he's gained weight, all right? So he hasn't kept in physical condition. At 6'6", 285, he's 30 pounds heavier than I am, all right? I am 6 foot tall, all right? He's 6'6". That 6 inches doesn't buy him the right body to be able to play 82 games in the NBA. This is not fat shaming is like, you should be ashamed of yourself. You're ugly. You're not desirable. That's fat shaming. Fact shaming is where you turn around and say, you know something? The guy's been hurt more than he's been active. That's true when he played at Duke, and it's true today. And it's something that I said before he was drafted. They said, you think he's the best player? And I said, I think that he is the most talented of the bunch, but that his legs and his upper body were two different things, and he was carrying way too much body in his upper weight. And I was concerned about the fact that his legs were injured perpetually. And here we go again. And I find myself having the same conversations with people. Fat shaming, and this is like bullying and all the things that have become the buzzwords in today's cultures. If a person wants to be morbidly obese or overweight, that is a decision and a choice that they make. At the same time, the New Orleans Pelicans have to decide, as this guy's career continues, if he continues to miss significant time because of a lack of conditioning, then it becomes of a term of employment. But facts are facts. If he's happy being the weight that he's at, playing the style of high-flying basketball and landing on the legs that he's got, then so be it. But I don't see why you would call out Mark Jackson and call out the network for just pointing out what's obvious for everybody to see. And Charles Barkley weighed 300 pounds when he was at Auburn, but he didn't when he came into the NBA because he had to play it off because there was no way. And the guy who didn't, Robert Tractor Trailer, died. He's fucking dead. And that's a fact. And nobody shames somebody after they die young.
All over Miller for the Phoenix Suns was the same way.
That's right. You're right. And,
he Big Mac'd his way right out of the league.
And, and I don't know what Zion Williamson's diet is, but
consume mass quantities.
Zion's perfect weight was his junior year of high school when he was like 250 to 265.
Well, see, and that's what Charles Barkley always tried to get his weight down to.
Yeah.
That's when he had the least amount of problems when he was in Philly.
It's just a physics thing, and the falling, coming down hard on a hardwood floor over and over again repetitively when you're way more. I mean, it's just that way. And if you don't ask the Judas Ilgauskas what it's like once you develop bad feet in the NBA, there is no.
Well, the other guy that they drafted with Ilgauskas that went to, they shipped him off to Boston. What the hell was his name?
What position did he play?
He was the other center that they had that they drafted.
Yeah, Vitaly Potapenko.
Yeah. He's the other one that had massive foot problems.
I mean, but the fact of the matter is, there is no second act for a guy who lives at 6'6" in the NBA as a high flying act if his legs go. And somebody's got to sit the young man down and say, look, you've got to push harder in your conditioning or else you're not going to have a long career. And it's happened to so many players in the past. It's not fat shaming. If you care about the guy and you want him to have the kind of career that you've predicted for him, then, there should be no problem in just acknowledging that it's a problem. And it's a shame because what the real shame of this is that you can't criticize somebody, and you're looking at somebody here. I've lost over 100 pounds. And the reason I was 100 pounds heavier was because I wasn't looking out and caring for myself. And what it took for me was a massive broken blood vessel after a tennis match in my right leg, where my whole leg swelled up and bruised. And what followed shortly after was the removal of my gallbladder. And now I'm suffering the debilitation of back injuries and in my cervical spine, my thoracic spine, and in my lumbar spine because I played tennis for all these years carrying all that extra weight. I'm just trying to tell Zion Williamson, if you want to get away from what happened to an idiot like me, don't be an idiot like me. And when you're young, lose the fucking weight. It's easier to do it than it is for me now. And if I can lose 110 pounds, Zion, you can get 35 off your frame and get down to 250 pounds. It can be done without surgery, just with a little bit of help. Take the help. All right, that's it. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Back again on Monday. Until then, hasta la vista, pasture heads. Good night.